Iris was injected with a muscle relaxant, lying on the ground unable to move or even speak, helplessly watching as the man spread gasoline throughout the room. When the flames ignited, Iris reached for the Venetian blind cord, and at the moment the man started his car, he noticed the anomaly with the window. Although Iris was rescued, what awaited her was not freedom. The story goes back a few hours, when Iris, unable to bear the pain of losing her son, planned to jump off a cliff and end her life because her son had died here, at this very spot. As Iris hesitated between jumping or not, the man suddenly appeared behind her, gently and patiently talking her down from the edge of death. He finally got her to safety, and the two of them made their way down the mountain together. But strangely, in such a large parking lot, the man parked his car right next to Iris. When Iris woke up again, she was lying in the back seat of the man's car, her hands and feet bound with zip ties. Her first reaction upon regaining consciousness was to use her smartwatch to call for help. The man calmly explained that the first thing everyone he captures tries to do is call for help. But unfortunately, there was no signal in this place. Iris had brought a small knife with her when she left the house that day, originally for carving something into a tree, but now it became her tool for escape. To avoid making noise, Iris cut at the zip ties while talking to the man, trying to distract him. After breaking free, she tried to ambush the man while he was off guard, but she underestimated his reflexes, and with the physical disparity between them, Iris failed. Fortunately, the car crashed into a tree, giving Iris a chance to escape. She cut the zip tie on her legs and yelled loudly for help, but she forgot that this was a mountainous forest with no one around. The man reminded her that he had injected her with another relaxant, which would paralyze her completely in 20 minutes. 1 minute later, she would start losing her fine motor skills. In 15 minutes, her legs would lose all sensation, and before all of her functions failed, she would first lose the ability to speak. Iris didn't believe him, and turned to run into the woods. The man calmly warned her from behind that any intense movement would speed up the effect of the drug. At first, Iris didn't believe him, but after running a short distance, she realized that her fingers were no longer functioning properly, and the only weapon was lost along the way. Now, the only thing she could do was find a hiding place before her legs went numb. She set a 20-minute countdown and continued running, but her body began reacting faster than she expected. As the man had said, intense physical activity accelerated the effect of the drug. Iris's slowing pace forced her to find a place to hide temporarily. Sure enough, as soon as Iris hid, the man appeared. Luckily, he didn't spot her hiding just below his feet, but Iris couldn't stay calm for long. Under the tree roots was an ant nest, and soon, ants began crawling up her body. It wasn't long before one of them crawled into her nose. Her startled gasp was heard by the man, who was still nearby. At that point, Iris could no longer care about the ants. Desperately, she crawled forward, relieved to find a river not far ahead.
You won't be able to swim!
Although she had evaded the man's pursuit, the raging river was too much for Iris, who had already lost 80% of her physical abilities. She could only surrender to fate. Fortunately, fate seemed to be on her side. She was carried to the riverbank, where a tree blocked her body. Using her last bit of strength, she barely managed to crawl up the bank, but only had 1.5 minutes left before her paralysis would be complete. Dragging her now numb legs, Iris crawled forward, but soon her arms lost all sensation too. Breathing deeply became incredibly difficult. Iris lay there in despair on the open ground, waiting for fate to take its course. Sometime later, Bill, who was weeding nearby, found Iris lying on the ground. Bill first turned off her countdown timer, then asked where she had come from. When Iris didn't answer, Bill flipped her over and moved his fingers in front of her face, asking if she could see. Iris responded by blinking.
Are you able to move at all? No. I'm going to take you inside, call 911.
Before Bill could call the police after he pushed Iris into the cabin, there was a knock at the door. When Bill turned around, he saw Iris frantically blinking at him. Luckily, Bill was smart enough to understand what she meant. When Bill opened the door, the man who had kidnapped Iris was standing there. He lied, claiming his wife had gone missing and asking to use Bill's phone to call the police. He also asked if Bill had seen a beautiful woman. Bill didn't answer. The situation was too strange, and he thought it best to call the police first. The man, however, began searching the house, even refusing to leave. Bill, irritated by the man's rudeness, ordered him to leave his property. Hearing Bill mention calling the police, the man suddenly broke down in tears, recounting his car accident. The man's name was Richard. He claimed his wife had a severe mental illness. They had gotten into an argument on the road, which led to the accident. When he regained consciousness, his wife was gone. He said he was terrified his wife might have a sudden breakdown, which would cause her limbs to stiffen and leave her unable to speak. Richard insisted he didn't want to involve the police. If his family found out, they would have his wife institutionalized, and they would be forced to separate. He loved his wife deeply, and his heartfelt story moved Bill. Just as Bill was about to reveal the truth, Richard's phone rang from his pocket. Bill immediately snapped back to reality. Although he wasn't sure how much of Richard's story was true, he wisely decided not to reveal Iris's location, but Richard was done wasting time. He forcefully demanded Bill hand over his phone and tell him where Iris was. Taking advantage of the moment when Richard stumbled, Bill grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Bill was in control, completely unaware that Richard had quietly grabbed a knife. The next moment, the sharp blade sank into Bill's ankle. Richard then easily killed Bill. To prevent the police from finding any evidence, Richard set both Bill and the house on fire. This made Iris, lying on the couch, panic. No matter what Richard intended to do with her, she couldn't let herself be burned alive. With all her remaining strength, she began pounding on the floor, hoping to draw Richard's attention. Hearing the noise, Richard turned around, thinking it was the sound of gasoline dripping. He didn't think much of it and turned away. The flames quickly engulfed Bill's body, and Iris, watching the fire getting closer, desperately moved her fingers. Just as Richard started the car, she managed to reach the Venetian blind cord. At that moment, Richard turned around and saw the blinds moving. Just like that, Iris narrowly escaped death. Richard blamed everything on Iris. If she hadn't run around, no one would have died. He drove off in Bill's car, heading to his cabin in the woods. However, the car was low on fuel, so they had to stop at a village gas station. On the way there, Richard's daughter called, saying she wanted to visit him and spend the weekend at the cabin. Unable to resist his daughter and wife's persistent pleading, Richard reluctantly agreed. At the gas station, Iris tried to unfasten her seatbelt. Though the effects of the drug were slowly wearing off, she wasn't yet capable of making a full escape. As she leaned against the window, gasping for air, a young boy nearby noticed her. The boy curiously glanced at her, but his mother quickly pulled him away, teaching him that it was rude to stare at people. Their conversation caught Richard's attention. He quickly finished fueling the car and drove off. First, they returned to the scene of the crime. Richard needed to change out of his blood-stained clothes. He then tossed some tools into the car, including a new muscle relaxant. Next, he retrieved a towing tool from the trunk, intending to tow his car away. At that moment, a police car pulled up, and the officer wanted to speak with Iris in the car, but Richard quickly claimed she was drunk and unable to speak. It turned out that the mother and son from the gas station had called the police. Suspecting that Iris was in danger, the officer asked Richard about the injuries on his face, and for a moment, Richard was unsure how to lie. While he was thinking, Iris, still in the car, struggled to turn the window crank. The noise attracted the officer's attention. Though she still couldn't speak, Iris gave the officer a look, silently signaling him to check the items inside the car. As the officer discovered the syringe, Richard immediately grabbed a weapon, not giving the officer a chance to draw his gun. Once again, he set both the car and the people inside it on fire. To his surprise, Iris was able to speak after just a short distance. This further aggravated Richard. The person he had truly wanted to kill hadn't died, and now, he had two more victims on his hands. His wife and daughter were also about to arrive, leaving him with little time to deal with Iris. At this point, Iris was focused on buying herself more time. She tried to engage Richard in conversation, using his family to distract him, hoping to appeal to his humanity and get him to release her. However, instead of softening him, her words only enraged Richard further. Although the needle had been injected, there wasn't enough strength left for the drug to take full effect. Iris screamed in despair as Richard dragged her onto a boat, intending to dispose of her in the middle of the lake. Suddenly, Iris began crying loudly, pleading with the man for one last favor, asking him to take a toy from her pocket so she could have one final look at her son's toy. Touched by the sight of another mother's desperation, Richard's heart softened. While injured, he pulled out his gun, but Iris, seizing the moment, rocked the boat hard, throwing Richard into the water. Iris had finally escaped Richard's grasp. She lay quietly in the boat, a triumphant smile on her face. However, it didn't take long for the hole caused by the earlier gunshot to start leaking water into the boat. Luckily, her physical functions were returning, and Iris managed to swim back to shore. Meanwhile, Richard also made it to the shore, though he was still alive. He had lost the ability to move.